Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Arden's Chats. This is a podcast where I talk to really cool people doing awesome things, and generally, always, they're in the business world. Generally, it's practical tactics that you guys know. Okay, I'm going to learn about Pinterest. I'm going to learn about marketing. I'm going to learn about this. Today, first off, I'm going to say trigger warning. We are going to talk about sexual assault. We are going to talk about things that you may not feel comfortable with. Totally understand it. If you cannot deal with, if the trauma is going to be triggering for you today, read the show notes and go to the next one, which I'm sure is not going to be as hard for you. But sometimes we have to talk about hard things and how they impact our business. That's why today I have Jess Michaels, who is a new friend of mine. I met her through another podcast, the founder of 3Joannes SAFR. And we're going to talk about her journey and what she's doing with her trauma to truly change the world, how we're dealing with sexual assault and things like that, which is awesome. Just tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Arden. It was so neat how we met and connected online. And I'm just so honored to be here. And I love the take that we're going to have on sexual assault and the things that I'm trying to change and do with my experience. So I was a professional dancer living in New York City in the early 90s. And I was 22 years old when I was raped by Jeffrey Epstein. And the damage that event did to me changed the trajectory of my career. It changed my trust in myself, which the world becomes a really scary place when you lose trust in your own ability to take care of yourself and you blame yourself. So it's a horrible rat hole for your brain to go down, which then would dissolve all other areas of my life, personal relationships, romantic relationships, my physical health, in a dozen and one ways. Interestingly is the wrong word. Shockingly, I had a breakdown moment after my hometown of Newtown, Connecticut experienced the Sandy Hook shooting. I was a dance teacher. I was living back home, dance teacher. It was devastating to my town and to the studio that I was working with and the students that had been in the school, the students that knew everybody in my small town. So it was absolutely devastating. And what that did for me and for my body was I just completely collapsed and didn't understand why I was having such a horrific reaction to this, a physical reaction, when I was looking around and not really seeing that in anybody else. And we started to recognize as I went to therapy that I had some severe past trauma that was being triggered by the shooting, and unraveling that the last 10 years has been life transforming. And what the moment where everything changed when Epstein was arrested in 2019, I knew that I needed to do something that would change this issue. Okay. That's my approach to life in general. I'm a problem solver. I'm an entrepreneur. And so I solve problems through making businesses. That's how I deal with my problem. But I also knew, and it's something we just talked about before we came on, is that I knew I wasn't capable just yet of actually being effective. And so what I did was I took time off and I just focused on my own healing. To the point where I could actually talk about it, because when all of this first came up, I could barely utter words about any of it. I could barely, share a fraction of what I'm telling you now without dissolving into a puddle of triggered trauma emotion. And so I'm always so grateful when I'm asked to talk on a podcast or be interviewed for something, because it reminds me of how far I've come. So thank you.
I love that.
Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. So I'm going to back up some of this. So first off, let's set the scene for, it's early, you said early 90s?
91. And I happen to have his, one of the reasons why I know the exact day and the exact time is because I was a dancer and I've been a journaler my whole life. I actually have all of my 1990s day planners. So I have the exact day that I was introduced to him for the initial job interview. And then it was the follow-up job interview that had happened. So I actually have his phone number, address, everything in my day planner.
I will reserve, because we are being recorded. If anyone ever wants to hear my sassy comments, feel free to.
I want to hear your sassy comments.
Oh my gosh, this guy. And so I want to talk a little bit, because rape culture is now in 2023 is very different than even in the early 1990s.
Yes.
And when we think about, things like, the Menendez brothers, like rewatching their story of like what those boys went through, and now what you as a girl at 22, listen, I am 44, 45 in a couple of weeks. We were girls at 20 and 21. You and I talked offline of we were dancers, and like there was no time that you weren't walking off the stage and ripping off clothes. You did not think about who was around you because you had to do a quick costume change, because bodies were not sexualized in dancing. Bodies were not, to us, like even to this day, people are like, what are they putting on those little girls? I'm like, we were never, I do not believe, even in the 80s and 90s, you cannot convince me we were sexualized. We were performers. Our bodies were super fun and we loved what we could do with them, but it was never this is what your body can function. When you're a true dancer, you love what your body can do. So I'm just going to, everyone who's judging, as a person who has experienced sexual assault myself, like we all judge ourselves, or the older, especially boomers, older Gen Xers, judge like, what were you wearing? What were you doing? We still don't test rape kits in North Carolina. The kids that are not getting tested, all of these things. When I was raped, I didn't go to the doctor because I was so embarrassed, because I was what were you drinking? What were you doing? And I was like, I just was hanging out with a guy that I thought I liked.
Yes.
And you were just doing a job. So walk us through, I don't want to give him any credit. If y'all don't know who Jeffrey Epstein is, he's a schmuck. He had women. He had women groom for him. If you don't know what grooming is, this isn't a true crime podcast. This is grooming. Go look up all that stuff. There's plenty of other people who will tell you about what grooming is, what the perpetual of what sexual sin does to people. I call it sexual sin. I went through Bible studies with some really great women who were assaulted, and what I believe God does to sexual predators is amazing. And I cannot wait to see their justice handed to them. But when you come out of this has happened to you. You haven't processed it. Will you walk us through really quick what those, what the actual process is for you?
Arden, you froze. Can you hear me?
Oh my God, I don't know what happened. This thing is crazy. I'm telling you, the devil is going to try to in the middle of us, but he's just not going to. So walk us through.
Excuse me.
Sorry, guys. I don't know what happened. So walk us through your experience, because your experience, whatever you're willing to share, your experience going into it, but also coming out of it, because what we talk about and how stuff shows up in our lives and our business, there are men and women watching this right now who are going to be impacted and something's going to stir up for them, that they're going to want to be a part of this and sharing your message as well. So If you could just briefly.
Yeah, this is actually when I learned this one thing. It is what gave me the divine inspiration, whatever, whatever languaging people want to use. Like I was
Absolutely.
like, oh, so that's why. And I'm not someone that believes, oh, things happen just for a reason. I believe we're given a situation and we get to choose, like we decide whether we're going to learn from it. We're going to use what and then we allow God's spirit, whatever, like to just guide.
Yeah, whatever you believe it.
So there was a moment that changed my life in therapy, and it was the understanding that when my body froze during the assault, when I was laying there going, I don't want this. Why can't I do something? I'm so stupid. Why am I not stopping this? That when that happened, I left the situation thinking I was stupid, and that's why I didn't trust myself. But when I learned that that is a normal body response, that there is fight, there is flight, there is freeze, and there is fawn. So that word fawn is being discussed in the mental health arena. Like they call it feign, they call it appease. There's different words for it. But when my body froze, I thought because I couldn't move, it was my fault. And when I learned that, that's actually a pretty normal response.
Yeah.
That's actually a really common response. So anybody that is watching this, I want you to know, like, look in my eyes right now, listen to my words. If you froze, freeze is not consent. It is not consent. And for the men listening, I hear men, they're like, she just laid there like a dead log, well, maybe she was in a freeze response, because when we talk about how this can impact our world, the way that it impacted me is that I now triggered this trauma response to happen even in like what seemed like benign situations. So anytime I felt vulnerable, I would shut down. In a work situation, all they had to do was raise their voice slightly, and I would shut down, and I would blame myself. When I would be in a romantic situation, that person, and I even remember at one point, like within a year of the assault, I got married because in my brain I thought, well, if I have a wedding ring on my finger, then I'll be safe. There are these things that happen, that you do, choices that you make, that become all about
safety,
staying safe.
Yep.
And when you stay safe, 9 times out of 10, you're also not necessarily staying authentic to what you truly need, but you are your body and your brain are in a pattern right now where all they're trying to do is stay safe. That's it. And that's how it can negatively impact every area of your life.
And truthfully, I mean, I think about my first relationship when I was just a teenager. It was not healthy. We were young. We were young. It was not healthy. Even relationships I'll do now, I'm like, there's all these, instead of having the conversations, male or female, it took me a long time to be vulnerable, to be like, this is not okay. You guys freezing me out is not okay. So I choose to walk away. Men and women. But if you have any things can trigger. So when it comes up, this is a business podcast, guys. So when you're coming up and you're going after this amazing client and you're the right fit for them and they say no, how many of you just immediately shut down and say, I'm not worth it?
Yep.
This is not good for me. This is not. There could be something else there. And in the early 90s, when these things are happening, what we also have to remember as Gen Xers is what we were taught was we lived and our parents, again, were doing the best they can, because all of a sudden we're up against, we have serial killers, most prolific serial killers in the world, because we don't have DNA. We don't have any way to check. suddenly these people who were, they're coming off of what happened and what they saw in Vietnam. They're not being told how to
Yes.
process this.
Yep.
They're coming back into this world unable to process things.
Yep.
All of these things are triggering. We've got cultures coming in from all over, like their way of doing discipline or their way of talking about things. Or I'm from the South. I'm Southern Baptist. Like, I was lucky enough to go to a church where we did talk about things, but that wasn't
Amazing.
normal to have conversations. And if you grew up in the South, you went to some church. All of this stuff is converging on some of the hardest times in history where you can't just go Google and go look for, are there other survivors? Is this normal? So you are having to process this and go through business. So you guys watching this now, Gen Zers, it's different for y'all. You have to look at
yes,
a whole different world. You have to not feel safe in your schools, right? Like
you're
getting triggered in different ways. So what do you do with that trigger? Okay, sorry.
What you said something really important that I think that any Gen Xers watching this, we grew up believing that the only way it was considered rape was how hard you fought and how much you pushed back and how much you said no legally, like in the law, in our laws. When I see things like all the public cases that come out and people are like, well, why did it take you so long to say something? Because our generation didn't believe in the freeze response. I was mute. I could not say a word. And so when I hear people like with the Jean Carroll case, like, why didn't she scream? I couldn't scream. My body wouldn't move. I was so devastated that when I walked out of the building, and I just remember walking past the doorman that had let me up into the building, and I remember thinking, I was like, everything, like since I saw him last, like everything just changed. And I didn't go to him screaming. No. I didn't talk. And my friend, so my company now is called 3Joannes.
Yes.
It's named after my friend who I told the next day. And she was actually like, she said, Jessica, I even told her, Arden, I told her a fraction of what happened because I was too humiliated, like to tell her anything.
So embarrassed.
But even the fraction that I told her, she's like, we have to go to the police. And I remember thinking, who's going to believe a 22-year-old dancer next to this wealthy Wall Street guy? And I didn't run out screaming. I didn't stop by the doorman to say anything. I didn't. And so I shut it down right then and there. It was how you dealt with it back then. So if I have any Gen Xers watching, like, just know it was never your fault.
Nope.
If you froze, it was not consent. If you didn't scream, it was not consent. If you didn't tell anybody, I mean, I was lucky. I told her, I told someone else, like, but that was it. Then I shut it down. When I truly believed, I was like, nope. It was my fault. I didn't move because I was believing everything.
Yep.
I didn't scream. I didn't fight him off. I didn't run out of there. So it must be my fault.
And I will add this. And if you went back, and if you continued dating them, if you continued and it never happened again, you still didn't consent to that. And this is for men and women. Women can be like, if you didn't want to do that thing that she wanted you to do, if you didn't, that's not consent. And again, I was looking at, statute of limitations may have passed, but it doesn't matter about the law. What we're talking about is how this impacts you right now. And how are you going to move forward with whatever that trauma is? Because it still is. It's still living there, festering in your body somewhere. So talk about the 3Joannes. So what is that 3Joannes? So if someone has right now, they're feeling this, they're watching this, they're like, I gotta tell I will tell you, the day I told my mom, I went years without saying anything. And I kept acting in these really strange ways. And I felt really strange and like, what am I doing? This is weird. Like, I was like desperate and dating these guys. And I was like, what? And everyone was like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know. but I don't know. But you can't. One day you're going to process. You need a Joanne. Who are your 3 Joannes? What is
that? So one of the things I recognized when he was finally arrested, when I started to do my healing, as I sat down and I thought about, I said, what is the moment that I wish I had understood things differently? What is the moment that it would have changed for me? And what is the moment that needs to change in all of this? And I realized it's the moment when we turn it in on ourselves. It's the moment when we internalize the guilt, we internalize the experience as being, this was my fault. We take all the blame. So even though I started to look back on this, I was like, actually, Joanne did all the right things. She saw something wrong and she asked me about it. She didn't need all the information. She just believed me right away.
Just don't get past that. Just believing someone.
Yes.
The number of people who didn't believe me, because I am a story. I am an exaggerator. I live life in color.
Yes.
But when you say something, no one's making, I'm telling you right now, even if they're lying about the person, which we see on SVU all the time, they lie about the person. No one just makes that junk up. They just don't. Something somewhere is happening.
Yeah.
You might have to dig a little bit, but just believe that something's happening. Just believe someone.
Yeah. And know that, statistically speaking, people are not lying about sexual assault any more than they're lying about getting robbed or being assaulted in any other. It's statistically exactly the same as any other crime, but there's very bizarre public narrative right around, oh, women are just lying about it. No, the volume is just really there, sadly. So
really there.
Sadly, can I just tell you, when I started talking about this publicly, I talked to about 50 people. The first 50, closest people, colleagues, because I knew I was going to be some things were going to be coming public. And so I shared with my 50 closest people. Of those 50 people, 40 people shared their story. Of those 40 people, 10% were men. Mm-hmm. So I know that they say it's 1 in 4 women, 1 in 6 men. And I think that those statistics are severely underestimated.
Yeah.
Because most of the time when we're assaulted, it's by somebody that we've known and met. And so there's a level of trust that has happened there. So the shock that happens when the moment changes into something else and turns into an assault.
Yeah.
It makes you question what part you had in it, which means it gets really complicated and then you don't report. And so that's part of the problem. So this is what I looked at the problem from a problem solving. I mean, I'm someone that loves puzzles. I do all the game. I was like, okay, I want to change this one moment. How do I change this one moment? How could it have been different? How could I have believed my friend Joanne when she said we needed to go to the police?
Yeah.
How could I have believed her? And I thought the only way, some of the different ways that I would have believed her would have been if I understood that to freeze was normal. Mm-hmm. If I had understood trauma responses just a little bit, not to become a mental health professional, but if I just understood that the people that fought, they didn't choose that either. The people that ran, they didn't choose that. Their bodies just, because what the trauma response does is it actually shuts down your executive functioning. It bypasses it completely to save your body. So there's a primitive part of the brain that believes it knows how to save you. It's just like you put your hand on a hot stove and it bounces off. Your body has a response. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to say, oh, wow, my hand's getting really hot on that stove. Oh, my goodness, I think I should move my hand. Yeah. That doesn't happen. Your body bounces.
Yes.
So same thing. Trauma's happening. Your brain shuts down executive function and your body decides for you how it is going to respond. You have no choice in the matter. None. So I thought, okay, we need people to understand the trauma response so that we trust. If I had known that, maybe I would have trusted Joanne more in her ability to help me.
Okay.
maybe if I had understood it was normal, I wouldn't have believed right away that it was my fault.
Yeah.
But I started also thinking about the fact that when other traumas and tragedies happen, we've as a society, we know how to learn lessons, right? We know how to look at those situations, and we learn how to prevent like those things from happening again. But we also create safety strategies so that
Yes.
when they happen,
Yep.
we will know how to minimize the damage when it happens.
Yep.
And Arden, we do it everywhere. We learn from fire. We learn that we tell kids don't play with matches in the house, but
Yep.
hey, if you do, stop, drop, and roll.
Right.
Stop, drop, and roll is not going to prevent a fire, but it's
No.
going to prevent somebody from being damaged. When we
on an airplane, when, hey, you guys are in this exit row, are you willing to help people get off?
Yes.
Yes or no? Like,
You know,
yeah.
the air masks falling down have one
Yep.
job. Like, let's prevent you from dying.
Yeah.
Let's prevent you from dying.
Yeah.
When you're in a car, they create braking systems so that we don't crash. However, seat belts and car seats for children have one job. They have one job. And when you buckle your car seat, you feel like, okay, I'm doing the best I can right now to protect myself.
Yep.
And all of those things are really important, and we need to do them. We recognize that seatbelts make sense. We recognize that stop, drop, and roll is common sense.
Yep.
But we teach kids to stop, drop, and roll, but they are 117 times more likely to experience sexual harm, and we have zero societally agreed upon strategies to protect them from the damage that can happen from that tragedy, because we don't want to acknowledge that it happens. We are so uncomfortable talking about this topic. We can't get past the discomfort of it to go, it's happening, damage is happening. Because Arden, one of the things that I found in my research, because I did a TEDx talk, and hopefully by the time this airs, they can Google it.
Okay.
I did a TEDx talk, and so we did research, and do you know what my team and I found? That there is such a high correlation between sexual violence and PTSD, and it's higher than war veterans.
Okay, why is that?
Because this issue is ignored when it happens.
Oh, PTSD from sexual assault.
From sexual assault.
Oh, yeah.
Is actually higher. The percentages of victims that go through and develop post-traumatic stress is higher than those that they have come back and studied from war. And that was a government study. And it's because I think we completely ignore, it is such there's nothing people cringe more at than child sexual abuse. There just isn't. The majority of the population. This is such a horrific topic to discuss. And yet it's not, we're not doing anything to actually, we just want prevention. But if I asked you, hey, do you know the number for the National Sexual Assault Hotline if something were to happen? Nobody knows it. They'd have to be Googling it, and they'd have to be doing it when they're traumatized. And the reality is we try to do it when we're traumatized. And at the same time, for me to, if I'm assaulted or my child, I have to step outside my community all by myself and try to find resources and help, because this topic is too uncomfortable for everyone to deal with. So the big issue that my team and I discovered is there's such a lack of community around this. Yeah. So, and I learned that from Sandy Hook, because I can tell anybody, and all I have to say are 2 words, and you automatically have empathy for me. I say, yeah, Sandy Hook, if I'm having a bad day.
Yeah.
You don't have to know any other information. You hear those 2 words, and there's a sense of, okay, I got you, Jess. I can hold space for you if you're struggling right now. Or, hey, let's go watch a movie. Let's go get some popcorn and some goodies and do some self-care and go watch a movie. You know what to do because of that. We don't do anything like that around sexual violence. We don't treat it like every other injury. We ignore that it is a psychological nervous system injury. It's a physiological injury, and it is ignored. And when you have a wound, and if it gets attention, it heals. But if you have a wound that is ignored, it's dismissed, it's vehemently denied for even being a wound, it festers badly. And that's how it turns into post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah. And that's so okay. Somebody watching this today and they don't hold space for people. I mean, it is. It's just holding space for people, especially when the world revolves around you. We as Americans, especially, the world revolves around us. Well, my kids need this, and this needs this, and this. Well,
Yeah.
I remember my grandmother died a couple weeks ago, and I was like, I needed something.
Yeah.
I'm still processing through it, right? Like, and I didn't really get a ton, like, because it's like, well, she was 101, right? Like,
Yeah.
and then, or what were you wearing? Like, you went back to his house. And you want your other sisters, you want your women to hold space for you. And I will tell you, it's 9 times out of 10, men hold space for me better than women do. Because they go, I am so sorry. That is not okay.
Yeah.
And I think we as women are so programmed. Well, this happened to me. So you need to get up. What if we were more like Joanne? What if we did just sit and go, I know this is not going to be easy. And I don't know what happened. But I think there's this movement to understand that crap happens.
Yeah.
And he was just a kid, or that boys will be boys, or how mean girls are they? That's just girls being girls.
Yeah.
No, none of that is actually okay. So I want to talk about like you as a parent, you as a business owner, how is holding space with these 3 Joannes, whatever it looks like, what are you trying to do with this movement?
So thank you, because it is a movement, and we're really excited about what we're trying to shift, how people look at, talk about, think about, and respond to sexual harm. And I love something you said earlier. I just want to point it out too. Something, and it's something my friend Tracy says, the way she says it is beautiful. She says something can be awful but lawful. Like just because it's not deemed, illegal or criminal doesn't mean it hasn't created harm. And that's what 3Joannes SAFR is. 3Joannes sexual assault first responders. So our first focus is going to be sororities. So we're going into sororities because it's a built-in community.
It is.
We're separating them into like groups of 4. So you have 3 Joannes. Everybody has 3. And the reason we have 3 is because a lot of times in society and in prevention, we expect one person to just step up and be that bystander and be the one person going against everything that's happening in the moment. And that is not fair.
As that person, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. I need a Joanne too, guys.
We need 3 of them. We all need 3. We need 3. So what we're saying is we call them 3Js because it could be a guy. It could be a guy friend that is awesome, that is your brother or like a brother to you. So it's 3Js. We say 3 Joannes because it resonates with my story and it's an important part of honoring her. But
and honoring her. Yeah.
And honoring her. But 3Js, we're saying, like, let's sit down. We do a workshop. It's a 4-hour workshop. We go through creating connection and community and trust and how that's going to look in a traumatic situation. We talk about the different trauma responses and how they're normal and what the behavior is going to look like afterwards. And that's why we're not going to judge it, and how we are going to treat this injury as no different than someone that was in a car accident. They broke their leg. In 2 weeks from now, they may not be on crutches anymore, but it doesn't mean that they're still not struggling. In a month, in 6 months. So how are we going to respond over that time? Just like you would with someone that broke their leg in a car accident. It's no different. It's the same type of injury. Yeah. But the other part of that is, so there's 3 parts of 3 Joannes. There's the people, which is that community.
Okay.
We create a pact because trauma experts know that early intervention right afterwards, surrounding that victim with support and trust and safety, is going to help them build resilience to heal more successfully. Okay. So we create this bubble around them of safety. And then you never do anything alone. So if they have to go to the hospital, you have a Joanne that goes, hey, my friend's friend is a forensic nurse, so I'm going to go with you. And hey, the other Joanne goes, oh, my dad is a police officer, so if we talk to anybody, we're going to go to him first. So part 3 is the plan. Together, you create a plan in advance of sexual harm. We start to think about it. We write it all down. We know exactly what we're going to do. But the really fun part too, not fun, but meaningful, is between your 3 Joannes, you choose a secret emoji. And so Arden, say you and I are Joannes, we go, okay, let's choose something together. And I always pick red balloon. I pick red balloon because I had a friend who said, I said, why do you send me a red balloon? And he said, it's because I want to wish you positive, buoyant thoughts. Aww. And so I thought it's red, so it's kind of like a red alert, but it has positive meaning to me. So let's use that. So I make a commitment to you and to my Joannes. I say within 24 hours, if of any questionable sexual behavior that's got me unsettled, I am going to send you this red balloon because I trust you. And you guys all say to me, okay, as soon as we get that red balloon, we don't need to ask you a million questions. We're just going to be there for you without in a moment's notice, because we know it might be hard for you to even talk about this. So we're not even going to ask you about it. We just going to get your red balloon. And then we're going to talk, like we're going to go back to our plan that we've already made before something happened, so that we can get exactly the help, the support, the information, the resources that we need together. And then no one, whether you're a supporter or a survivor, ever does this ever alone again. Because when we talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, you talked about the veterans coming back from Vietnam. What was different? The isolation. The isolation, living inside your own head and internalizing it, is one of the causes of post-traumatic stress disorder.
And they came back and no one believed them, or no one. It wasn't the same as there were no parades. There was no we appreciate you. There was what the heck were you doing? The whole world. And that's a lot of it now, because we have very high profile cases of not believing, or men or women lying about certain things to get attention or whatever it is. Guys, people are going to exploit. They're going to exploit. But 9 times out of 10, if your friend that you trust is coming to you and saying this, he or she is telling you the truth, and the level of vulnerability to be able to say that. A lot of people will say, Arden, you're so strong. And I'm like, I am not normal. I have a gift.
You've healed. You've gone.
Yeah, I've healed. But also, even in the moment, listen, stuff happens. We have to deal with it. What does it look like to deal with it? And where can I go for support? Because I grew up in a very supportive system, right?
Yes.
I'm extremely lucky that my biggest thing was like, I don't want to disappoint anyone, right? Or I don't want to bother anyone.
Yeah.
Most people are not me. I don't know why I have this gift, but most people are not. And even the me's of the world. I remember reaching out a couple weeks ago, and maybe several months ago, and I tried to find several people. I was like, I need somebody. I am not well. And not one person that I reached out to took time to reach back into me.
Yeah.
Outside of my parents.
Right.
That
happens to everybody. Yes.
Right. And I went, your group is not right. Yeah. You do not have the right people around you. So when you're looking for these 3 Joannes, I want to encourage you as well, be discerning over it. Take some meditation, take some time to go and check yourself too. Am I going to reach back out?
Am I going to be the person that is being required in that moment? Yes. Right. So that's one of the things that we do talk about as well. We're before you look to other people to be a 3J, figure out if you can be that, and then maybe offer to be it for someone else.
Yeah.
And that's how you can develop your group of 3. We're starting in sororities. Then we're going to brother fraternities, because hazing is an issue. Hazing and the things that happen to boys is horrible. And they're less likely to talk about it, because look, they see what happens to us when we talk about it. Why are they going to bring it up to anybody? Nobody's going to. We all have nervous systems. So guys, you freeze too. You freeze and you appease too, because you have a nervous system, because you're a human. It's not whether you're male or female. It's you have a nervous system, and you have a primitive area of your brain that responds. So any guys listening, if you froze, that's normal. It was your body saving you.
Right. And
Saving you.
there's no such thing as, if you do not feel comfortable with this, you do not feel comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Boys will be boys, girls will be boys, or girls will be girls, whatever, days will be they, like whatever goes on in the locker rooms and all this kind of stuff. If you're not comfortable, that's all you need.
Yeah.
I remember someone flirting with me in high school, and I was like, I'm not a big toucher. And I was like, stop touching me. And it was female, and she was touching me. And I was like, I do not want to be touched. I was out with someone a couple months ago, and she kept touching me. I was like, stop touching me. It's okay. You can, your feelings and who you are and how you respond to things, that's the biggest thing. Like, sometimes you have to be your own Joanne. That's the scary thing, is sometimes you just have to go, nobody else is showing up for me. So somewhere in me is enough strength to get through the next 2 hours, 1 hour, whatever it is.
Yeah. And you also just said, like, sometimes we have to be our own Joanne. In that moment, like, we can, maybe we can stand up to ourselves, but then the aftermath can sometimes feel like, oh, that was so awful, and I want to be able to share it with somebody. And then that's when we can go back to our group of people that are our safe group and just say, you know what, this isn't like call the police time, but it was really crappy, and I just want to talk it out with someone. I just want to get it out so that I'm not holding it in, because a big thing that happens again is that isolation, and then our brain playing around with it and deciding that somehow we were at fault, or we should have done something different, and we didn't. And that's how it, when we internalize and interpret it, it's how our body responds. We end up harming ourselves. And that's why sometimes it just, having 3 people to reflect back to you, oh my gosh, I had the same issue with that guy at the last frat party. It's not just you. It's not just you. So and I felt uncomfortable too. Just being able to have some of these conversations. And I will tell you, the thing that I have seen most, Arden, and it's another reason why I want to have 3 Joannes happening, is because we need to start having conversations around this to the point where we are comfortable talking about it. I lost my train of thought, and it was a really good one too.
Okay, we're too comfortable talking about it, and
because the reason why people don't talk about it is because they're triggered from their own trauma. It's not because I don't think it's because people don't care. I think it's because they're in their own overwhelm, and they cannot handle it. And so one of the reasons we're starting at sororities, where we are going in. So I have to tell you about the third part. So there's the people, the pact, and the plan. So we have the people, the pact, and the plan. We're starting in sororities. We're training them for 4 hours. We go in. We help everybody find. It's not about your best friend. It's literally, if they were learning CPR, you guys all know you have the same training. So it's whoever we put you with is going to be someone that you can trust because you trust our training.
Okay.
The third part is the plan, and that's the app. So you take the workshop and you'll get an app, and it's the 3J Sexual Assault First Aid Kit. And so in that last part of the class, we go through, we take all the information that we just learned and talked about, and we build our first aid kit.
I love that.
And so you automatically have a response. You know how to respond. You know how to act. You know how to show up and support. And you know how to empower.
Yeah. And I would think this really and truly going through this is going to prevent so many assaults. Because what happens is, I don't think at the root, most people are bad. I do think some people are just bad. But not knowing think about it like your frontal lobe is not fully developed in college.
Yeah.
You're experimenting with every sort of thing that you feel like is the cool thing to do. Unfortunately, you're taking drinks, whether it's alcohol or not, from someone, and things are getting put in them. Like everyone wants to blame it on alcohol. They want to blame it on drugs, but sometimes, dude, you're hanging out in the library and this guy is helping you and he's just creeping you the heck out.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
don't want to be the mean girl because everyone said you're so mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be the mean girl, protect yourself.
And I think that that's a really great area that we should be discussing as women. Like, we're allowed to put boundaries around what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. You know, I have this one story to tell you, and it's something that was really impactful in my life. Do we have time for that one?
Yeah.
So, there was somebody that I went on a date with, and it was just our first date, but we were really into each other, and it went a little farther. And he must have seen the look on my face because I didn't say anything. And he goes, "Oh my gosh, is this too fast?" And I just went, because I was already, because what happens is sometimes that freeze response turns into me being performative. And he must have seen me completely disconnect.
Yeah.
And right away we stopped and we sat up and we just talked. And it was the most, like, if you want to talk about a hero, that was a hero for me in that moment, because he cared about the connection, not just the act. And I think sometimes let's put it this way. Every other time that I've been with someone, they're not necessarily in tune. That's the only time I've ever had someone notice that I started to disconnect. And it's something I've had to learn to become aware of now. And as I've gotten older and gone through my healing process the last couple of years, but he was the only one, and it was like 10 years ago. And it was the first moment that I recognized, oh, that I didn't realize I was doing that. You know, and it was beautiful. It was a beautiful moment. And we need more men. What we need you to do is be aware of whether we're actually connected to you in that moment, because when we're not, things can be shutting down emotionally and physically and be unaware. I had no idea that I was numb physically most of the time. And what we need are women to start to become aware of their boundaries. And, you know, I heard a wonderful dating coach that said this, and it was really impactful to me. It said, women hold the gate to intimacy and men hold the gate to commitment, like sexual intimacy. And if we would just learn to negotiate those things together, like women, we don't have to have intimacy to have love. I would confuse, and this is, I would confuse love. It confuse sex with love. I confused attention with love. I confused just any kind of compliment, presence, anything. I confused sympathy with love. And because I was just looking for something outside of me to protect me, I was desperate. I was needy. I was so looking for someone to be a hero to protect me, because I felt incapable. I mistakenly believed I was incapable of taking care of myself. And that showed up in work. So where I had started off in my career being just this badass auditioner, I actually loved auditions. I was like, I love walking in there and just killing it in front of people auditioning, to afterwards being afraid of auditions and not being able to put on my best self, and not understanding why I lost my self-confidence and why I was no longer the powerhouse, that I couldn't even connect the events. I just knew something had changed, and I could not understand or remember why. And we all have to take responsibility for where our boundaries are, but we also have to give each other compassion. So I watched one survivor who was able to power through and create a company, and that was how she dealt with her trauma. Get mad at another survivor because that survivor was still stuck in pain and anger and
Yep.
and her one survivor not understanding why are you stuck in you just have to get over it. You just have to
Oh my
you
gosh.
just have to and this poor girl she was dealing with it in her own way. And I think we're, as women, this is why we wanted in 3Joannes, we do a section on trauma. Like, however someone is responding is how they are responding. It's like trying to tell someone to talk them out of their gluten allergy.
Like,
well,
dude,
power through.
Right. And little things like, and we'll wrap up on this because I want everybody. It's however you're responding. Like, if I see a pack of men or just one man that's bigger than me and I want to cross the street, I'm going to cross the street.
Yep.
If I don't feel comfortable in a parking garage, I'm not going to, it's not my problem that I don't feel comfortable. It has nothing to do with the color of your skin. It has nothing to do with how many of them there are. It has nothing to do with anything except my own trauma and how I'm dealing with it. So stop putting that on me. I am sorry that this is what's happened to me and this is how I have to protect myself now. But it is how I protect myself now.
You're allowed to take care of how you feel and what makes you feel safe.
Yep.
And that's going to look different for everyone. And that's one of the reasons why we want to do this. Like, look, we can train you to understand trauma responses in a really simple way so that you're there for yourself. You have self-compassion and you can be there for others in a compassionate way.
And letting that be and going, you know what? The millions of guys that reach out to me, if I don't respond back to you, and I mean, there are every day. If I don't respond back to you, I'm not the bitch. I don't cuss on this much. I'm not. I get to protect myself as well.
You get to
I always say, it's not my fault I look like this. I just look like this. And it's not my fault what's happened to me. This is what's happened to me. And every single person watching this, you do not have to placate because some man or some woman is making you feel guilty. If you're not comfortable, you're not comfortable. And that is absolutely okay. Because you've been through whatever you've been through and your body is protecting you somehow or the other. Protecting you. Maybe it's not for forever, but in this moment, it's protecting you. And that, whether it's that client you don't want to go meet or someone swearing that if you just meet with me, that is great. You can get me to $1 million. You know what? I'd rather be at 100,000 and feel safe. Like,
yes. And you know, it's that there's an instinct I believe we all have. And this is where trusting ourselves, like if you were to put yourself in this situation and go, well, if I do this, how does it make me feel? And if I do this, how does it make me feel? Go with the one that makes you feel safe and sure and like, yep, this feels better for me. Because I think our instincts are stronger than we believe.
Oh yeah.
And we know what's going to keep us safe. We just worry more about how it's going to be perceived.
Yeah, we do. All right. How can they find you? And I'll put it in the show notes too. This has been awesome. Like, I
can talk to you forever. Yeah. I think we have so much to talk about. So they can find me on my website right now, which is jessmichaelsspeaks.com. The 3Joannes SAFR workshop and 3J's sexual assault first aid kit app will be launching soon. We're like inching our way to launching soon. So hopefully by the time this airs, it will be launching. And I'd love it if everybody would check out my TEDx talk. It's Surviving Epstein, How a Red Balloon Could Save Your Life.
Oh God, I'm going to stop the recording because then I'll say things that could be defamation. I don't have time to be sued. So I have a journalism through and through. I don't have time to be sued, girls. All right. Thanks, everybody. You can find me at definitopublicity.com, Definita_publicity, or on this YouTube channel. So thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.